Welcome back to the Ed Show, and thanks for staying with us tonight. Well, now that the right wing has had their butts handed to them on the national security issue about who can make the right calls and when, here is a list of the BS that they are desperately trying to push out to the public. They say that the Justice Department should drop its prosecution of CIA interrogators from the Bush years. But the Obama administration said 2 years ago that they won't go after any interrogators who were acting on legal advice at that time. The right also keeps saying that waterboarding, well, it's not torture. And they say the Obama administration is still, well, they're taking too much of a law enforcement approach to terrorism. So, what are the Senate Republicans going to do about it? They have actually blocked President Obama's choice as Deputy Attorney General. His name is James Cole. Mr. Cole is serving in that role right now as a recess appointment by the president. But, of course, his tenure will expire at the end of the year if Republicans don't stop playing politics. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Pat Leahy, a Democrat, said, for the first time in history, a nominee to serve as the Deputy Attorney General, a key national security position, is facing a partisan filibuster. But the top Republican on that committee, Chuck Grassley, said, I'm seriously concerned about Mr. Cole's views on national security and terrorism. It just never stops, does it? Let's bring in counterterrorism intelligence expert and former master instructor and chief of the training at the Navy's SEER School, Malcolm Nance. Mr. Nance, SEER means survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. This man wrote the book. Great to have you with us tonight.
Good to see you.
President Obama just made the call to take down Osama bin Laden. And Republicans are throwing a temper tantrum by blocking the confirmation of the Deputy Attorney General. What do you have to say about that?
You know, Ed, I live in the Middle East, and every time I come back to the United States, there's always something that raises my eyebrow. And today I have to think, what is going on back here? You are politicizing one of the top officials who's responsible for the security of the United States, particularly with regard to counterterrorism. We don't have time for these games. We have now just kicked over the hornet's nest by killing bin Laden. A lot of revenge attacks are probably being planned even as we speak. But we have key people who aren't in the position to defend this country.
Republicans are saying Mr. Cole takes too much of a law enforcement approach to terrorism. What's your response to that?
Well, that's very interesting because the RAND Corporation, at the U.S. government's request, did an analysis of how terrorist groups end. Terrorist groups end predominantly in two ways. 43% of the time they end through political reconciliation. 40% of the time they end through law enforcement and intelligence actions of the same type that we saw, hybrid, that we saw in Pakistan against bin Laden. Only 10% of the time do they ever end in a military victory.
Plenty of the talkers on the right say that the CIA interrogators from the Bush years should not be prosecuted. What do you think?
Well, as an intelligence professional, I believe that they're operating under orders. These orders at the time were ruled lawful. The President of the United States has already said he's not going after the interrogators. I believe there does need to be a reconciliation process, at least within the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, to find out how did they process these orders and what did they do after they were given them. Did they exceed them or not, so that we can make sure that this never happens again. Mr.
Nance, I want you to listen to this soundbite from O'Reilly's program last night on this issue. Here it is.
You just made another mistake. Navy SEALs and Special Forces are waterboarded in their training. And I'm sure you know that, okay? They're waterboarded. They don't say it's torture. They don't say anything.
Yes, they do.
Are they waterboarded in their training?
You know, some may, because waterboarding is actually no longer done. It's not been done since this controversy broke out in 2005 when we found out that the people who were being trained had their template taken, a template written in blood of dead service members, and turned into a torture program. If they're given that training and they are exposed to that, that's called stress inoculation. That's so that when an enemy who has no regard for laws or rules captures them and tortures them, they have some ability to resist that. But they are not tortured in the same way that the enhanced interrogation technique program.
Are SEALs trained to waterboard?
No, not all. And I believe that none are now at this time.
Liz Cheney keeps saying that if the United States captures anyone else as a result of the treasure trove from bin Laden's compound, we don't have an effective way to interrogate them.
You know, that's absolutely amazing. And I find that You know, it appears that that Ms. Cheney has adopted sadism as some form of religion. This is not the way the intelligence process works. This may have delayed by 5 or 6 years us actually getting the critical information that we needed to actually find that compound. They found it through good intelligence work, not through torture.
Take us through that night when the operation took place and you heard that it had been completed and the SEALs Team 6 was there. What went through your mind?
Well, I was rather surprised that it was DevGru as opposed to the Delta Force, but I'm very proud. As a sailor, as a former sailor, I just think that's absolutely fantastic.
Why did that surprise you?
Because these are the 2 special mission units which are responsible for taking down the highest value targets. The SEALs obviously had the rotation at this time. It was their chance to go and do it, and I think that they handled it brilliantly and excellently, and this is how the United States owes them a great debt of gratitude for doing their mission.
But they're highly trained. Are they well educated? I mean, there's so many stories floating around. You know, they're Rambos or whatever. I need to clear this up with you. I mean, you wrote the book, the Red Book. I mean, tell us about it.
You know, it's absolutely amazing, but SEALs are very highly intelligent people. The Special Forces process, the Naval Special Warfare process and the Special Forces schools brings these people to understand, respect the cultures that they're in, the people that they're working with, and then help them process that and give them the intelligence that they need to go into a foreign nation and either train the indigenous forces or carry out a door-kicking mission. But when it comes to executing extreme violence, they're the best in the world at that. But before they do that, as some of my students have asked me in the past, they say, hey, before I go through that door, I want to know all about the culture. I want to know all about the people. And I want to know how they're going to operate. How are the children going to behave? How are the dogs going to behave? But when I go through that door, how is the terrorist going to behave? These are
tremendously disciplined people.
Highly analytical people.
Interesting. Malcolm Nance, great to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
You bet.